All right, normally in this segment, I start with, so here's my argument. But we had some breaking news at the border today, and I want to use this time to address it. A mob of migrants broke through the barriers put in place by the Texas National Guard. Take a look at this. That is not some third world country. That's right here on our border at El Paso. Right now, Donald Trump is running with 40% approval for his reelection with Hispanic voters. And last night we played you a clip of Abby Phillip not being able to deal with this on CNN. Here's another CNN clip.
You might think, that Hispanic voters might be the types of folks who would have a backlash against Donald Trump's remarks, right? Ain't the case. If you ask Hispanic voters, who do they trust more on border security and immigration? Overwhelmingly, they trust Donald Trump more by a tremendous margin. Look at that, 49% to 24%. And that is in line with what we're seeing in the polls in general amongst Hispanics, right? Joe Biden won them overwhelmingly back in 2021 and by over 20 percentage points. Democrats normally carry them overwhelmingly. If you look at the polling right now and an average of polling amongst Hispanic voters, who do they choose in the ballot test? It's barely Biden by about 2 points. It would be the smallest margin for any Democratic candidate among Hispanic voters, basically throughout history since we started polling the gosh darn thing. So the fact is, at this point, there's no backlash, and at this point, I don't see one coming.
All right, let me bring in the Director of Hispanic Engagement at the American Principles Project, Alfonso Aguilar. Why do we assume that Hispanics somehow, different than other groups, support lawlessness?
Right.
And why do we assume that all Hispanics are immigrants? I mean, you've got third, fourth, fifth generation Americans who have Hispanic heritage, but people come to this country legally not to abandon the rule of law, but for the rule of law.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is the pandering that Democrats have engaged in for years, right? To try to say that all Hispanics support open borders. Well, they're wrong. And when they see those images, which are really impressive, they're not happy with that. They believe that the American dream is all about the rule of law, and what we're seeing at the border is lawlessness. And they know very well that it has been this administration that has encouraged this massive wave of people to make that dangerous journey towards our border. So this is one of the reasons why they're moving towards the right, and they're embracing Donald Trump. They think Donald Trump is serious about dealing with the border. And in all the polling that you see out there, they're not happy with the job that Biden is doing on immigration.
What about the attacks? I remember, and I spoke to Mayra Flores about this, when they called her, I'm going to paraphrase it, it was like she was the rise of the far-right Latina. And then there was a series of articles about Hispanic white supremacy. And I was like, oh, that's not going to go over well. Believing in the Constitution and the rule of law and border security and maybe lowering taxes and tackling this inflation thing doesn't make you a white supremacist. And you don't call people, you don't just call Hispanics white supremacists. That's not a winning message.
Well, see, they're frustrated. The reality is that for a very long time, they've tried to create the perception, they'll deny it, but they have. They've tried to create the perception that Hispanics are monolithic, that we all think the same. They will always say, well, they're different in terms of country of origin, but at the same time, they agree on they have the same positions on the major issues. Well, that's not true. Hispanics are not monolithic, and as they've assimilated, they're starting to vote like average Americans. So those who in the past voted for the Democrats but are conservatives are saying, why am I voting for the Democrats? I'm going to vote Republican. And then we're starting to see the rise of Hispanic swing voters, those who are saying, I'm not going to follow groupthink. I'm not going to follow what the Democrats and the left tells me. I'm going to follow what I believe is right. what's best for my family, for my pocketbook, for my community. And they're starting to see in their communities gang members from Venezuela. Their communities are now insecure, and that's why they're turning on the Democrats. And the Democrats are going berserk. They can't accept this because they really thought that they had a hold on Hispanic voters. Well, guess what? They're smart, and like most Americans, they care about the future of the country. And they're, if you look at every poll, Biden, on every single issue, Hispanics think that Biden is doing a bad job.
The other thing is that I think it's an insult to any group when, for example, Biden says, Trump said Hispanics are poisoning the blood of America, or they're animals. They're not really people. No, he was talking about gangsters that are in prison in Central America. He wasn't talking about people who are of Hispanic or Latino descent or are bilingual or what have you. It's an insult to those people's intelligence to lie to their faces, because it takes 2 seconds on Twitter or YouTube to see the whole clip.
Well, and in that sense, those comments from Biden are offensive because they can see that he's pandering them, that he thinks they're not intelligent. They know exactly what Trump was talking about. They know what's happening at the border. They know what's happening at their communities. They're seeing a lot of bad hombres, literally, moving around their communities, coming through the border. And some of those criminals are very serious. I mean, talk about the Venezuelan gangs. For the very first time, we're seeing members of Tren de Aragua, a very dangerous gang born in the streets of Caracas, who have gone to Ecuador, Peru, vandalized those countries, committed all sorts of crimes in those countries, and now they're coming to America. So, it's incredible that Joe Biden thinks that Hispanics don't realize that and don't see what's happening.
If we're looking at poll numbers of upwards of 40%, I don't see how he wins re-election if he loses. I mean, they said that it hasn't been since Bush's election. I mean, this is amazing. Black and Hispanic voters are moving toward the Republican Party like never before. I got 10 seconds. You want to wrap it up?
Well, we just did a poll of Hispanic voters in Nevada and Arizona, two key battleground states, specifically Arizona. And Biden is head-to-head. They're in deadlock with President Trump. He cannot win Arizona if he doesn't have massive support of Hispanics, and he doesn't.
Great news. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
After the break.